Have you ever heard what a mental hospital was? Doesn't look so bad, does it? Wait till you hear what happened inside. Mental hospitals were first made in the 1700s to house the mentally ill, and in the process of housing them, often tortured them. The hospitals were revealed in 1886 when Nellie Bly, a journalist, got herself intentionally admitted to a mental hospital for 10 days. Being there, she was exposed to several horrible mental illness treatments, the most notable being near complete isolation and being forced to lay down perfectly still for hours. Additionally, she was forced to eat bad food and have ice-cold baths. Another one of the horrible treatments they gave to the mentally ill was a lobotomy. Lobotomies involved forcing an ice pick through the patient's eye socket with a hammer, with the purpose of disconnecting the frontal lobe of the brain from the rest of the brain to hopefully remove the mental illness. Luckily for those with mental illnesses now, the last mental hospital was closed in the 1990s. Italy was one of the first countries to reform their mental health care and changed from abusing those with mental illnesses to helping them. In a law passed in 1978, they revised their mental health solutions in multiple ways. First, by making psych wards in normal hospitals. These were used to treat severe conditions. For those with less severe conditions, a out-of-hospital doctor would come to their home to help them. It took a long time for these methods to become as successful as they were intended to be. One of the main issues with the new method was that very few psych wards were made, therefore, there was a very limited amount of space in hospitals to deal with the more severe cases. Additionally, they shut down mental hospitals and asylums to remove the abusement of the mentally ill by those hospitals and asylums. The changes that Italy made were a precedent and a starting point for other countries to follow and continue in the way of improving mental health care. Sadly, even with mental asylums closed, stigmas and fears of the mentally ill still exist. This causes mistreatment of the mentally ill among those who are healthy, and additionally denial of being mentally ill among those who have mental illness. This makes the job of finding and helping those with mental illness much more daunting, because people think that mental illness is horrible and demeaning to them, so they refuse to believe that they are mentally ill. It is a widely held stereotype that all people with mental illness are violent or insane, while most mental illnesses are very minor and difficult to see because those with said illnesses are not violent or insane. They are much more like mentally healthy people than they are like the mentally insane. Also, even though it is easier for doctors to identify and treat mental illnesses, many of the more difficult-to-diagnose cases, those with smaller issues, are left unnoticed because the public is not educated enough to notice any illnesses. This is a large problem because these smaller issues can eventually build up to large psychological problems. Sadly, in addition to being hard to identify, finding support for the poor and improving their mental health is very difficult, especially those stuck in a downward spiral of mental illness to loss of a job to more mental illness. Donations for mental health charities are difficult to obtain because it is very difficult to empathize with statistics or with someone who is so easily stigmatized as crazy. Almost 70% of the mentally ill in the United Kingdom are discriminated against in some manner, yet it is completely overlooked as a safety or equality issue and not talked about in the news because it is stigmatized so much by the public. Mental illnesses are much more common than people think. Over 12% of the people on the planet currently have a mental illness, while over 25% of the people on the planet will develop a mental illness in their lifetime. All in all, over the past century, the worldwide treatment of people with mental illnesses has improved, but is still far from equal or fair treatment.